Good day, everyone, and welcome to Different Stages Radio. I'm your host, JJ, broadcasting in Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada, and I'm excited today to bring you one of Canada's premier melodic hard rock bands who are about to release their 16th studio album on April the 25th, Chasing Euphoria on Frontiers Music. Please welcome my guest, Harry Hess. How are you?
Very good, thank you. Good to be here.
Pleasure to have you. So, I know there's been many live albums and mini albums in Japan and various EPs, but is Chasing Euphoria the 16th album?
It's the 16th studio record, full-length studio
Yes.
record. Honestly, I stopped counting after like 30 releases, and we hit like 30 releases probably back in the early to mid 2000s. Because when we were on Warner, because of our, success in Japan, they wanted something out like every 6 months, like not joking. And so they would be like, "Hey, do you want to do, a best of this? Do you want to do a live, and then a best of live, then a ballads release, then Harem Scarem rocks, then Harem Scarem B-sides, then it was insane. Like we couldn't keep track of it. So I think it was somewhere on our website where it was all, depicted on there. And then the single releases and all that stuff. Yeah, it's been nuts. But 16th full-length studio record.
And first album in 5 years, first since Change the World, which was also a brilliant album. You're three singles in so far to Chasing Euphoria, Reliving History, awesome. The second single, opening cut, the title track, Chasing Euphoria, amazing. And then just a couple days ago, you released Better the Devil You Know,
Yep.
great track. Had the pleasure to hear the album throughout. And once again, consistent album that you consistently bring to us. Slow Burn was a standout for me. I really dug that a lot.
Cool.
The ballad World on Fire was killer. And the closing track, Wasted Years, was great. Now, I wanted to ask though about Gotta Keep Your Head Up.
Yeah.
Is that Darren kind of singing primary lead on that?
That is Darren on that one. And it's been a while since Darren sang lead vocals on a song. And I was looking for something on this record that he could sing, and I sang a version of it in the beginning when Pete and I were writing it. Obviously, demoed it out, and I thought, oh well, Darren would be perfect for this. And when he was coming in to do backing vocals, I asked him if he wanted to do it, and of course he said, yeah, I'll give it a shot. So he came in and he did an awesome job, killed it, and selfishly, I tell people, I go, I get to take a break live for a song because honestly, we're putting together this tour in Europe. We're going to be doing 10 shows in 10 days. And I'm like, yeah, we need some extra vocals out here. And Darren's, lead vocal quality, sings lead vocal in other projects with other bands and stuff like that. So it's a no-brainer to have him sing on some of this stuff.
Yeah, because it just helps add another flavor aside from giving you a break during a live show, but it just
Exactly.
adds a bit more color to the album, but you still know that it's Harem Scarum. And that's what I
Yeah.
think is amazing is because your harmony is still cut through and it's brilliant.
Yeah, and look, I mean, probably, fans of the band know this, but Darren sings along with me on every chorus that we do anyway, like beefing up backing vocals. He will double the lead vocal, and then I do the same thing on Heads Up. So it kind of blurs the lines. We create a new voice when the two of us sing together, and we have similar tones and range. And so some people come to the live shows and go, "Oh, I had no idea that that wasn't you," or vice versa. Like they can't tell the difference. I guess I don't know. It's obvious to me, but at the end of the day, I guess there are similar characteristics, and when we sing together, we're definitely creating a sound that's kind of indicative of a harem scarem chorus. So that's been a common thread throughout, since day one, actually.
And since you guys have pretty much just started working together, you've only known Darren for a couple months, maybe?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Yeah, like 40 years or something like that. So, yeah, insane.
That's got to be pretty incredible. So now is Darren, once again, is he just singing on the album? Is he playing any drums at all or not?
Well, you know what? Obviously, Darren was is one of the original members of Harem Scarem, and in the early 2000s, he left to kind of pursue, being a lead vocalist in other bands, and we, always supported him in doing that. Obviously, Darren's a great singer, and he wanted to just do some other things and try some other things, and then we hooked up with a friend, Creighton Doan, that is a great studio drummer, and me producing a lot of records back in the day. Creighton was kind of like the first guy that I'd always call to play drums on a studio record. And, for those people that don't know, the studio world is very different than the live world. It's just kind of a different animal. And you can be a great drummer, but in the studio, unless you do that every day, it's a different experience for anybody recording, as opposed to just getting up on stage and playing the songs live. So, our relationship with Creighton along the way really developed, and always had these side relationships with him as well. So Creighton started playing drums on the record, came out with us live, and then, when 2013 rolled around, it was the 20-year anniversary of Mood Swings. So offers came in to, hey, can we get the original band back to do a live tour, Europe, Japan, what have you. So that's when I called up Darren and I said, hey, we're getting these offers to do this. Do you want to do it? Of course, he said, yep, love to do that. But as far as our studio relationship goes, I mean, we're best friends with Creighton, and we love what he does. And it's just this weird thing now where we have a studio drummer, but Darren's our drummer. But Darren kind of came back into the fold, and we didn't want to kick out Creighton or just say, well, thanks, Creighton, see you later. We still work with the guy every day. So a lot of little weird, awkward moments, but we're actually never weird and awkward for us personally. The only weird part was explaining it to people. So Darren doesn't have a problem with it. Creighton doesn't have a problem with it. None of us do. And so everybody's kind of doing what they do best, if I'm being honest. And we've just continued down that path. Because in essence, we are a bit of a studio project at this point in our lives where we're all doing separate things, and we come together to make a Harem Scarem record. We come together to do, a tour stint, whether it's Europe or Asia or whatever like that. But it's not like all day, every day we do Harem Scarem and that's all we do, like a normal band would do. That's what we did for the first, 15 years or whatever. But after, I'd say from the 2000s on, we've always had other side projects that have taken up a lot of our time individually. And like I said, collectively, we have to come together, carve out the time, and do what we're doing. So in our minds, it makes perfect sense.
And it seems very mature, and the fact that everybody can be on board and work with that relationship, I think, is amazing.
Yeah.
Now, Darren was also on the Live in Phoenix album, which was great. Will he be doing any of the Euro dates, or is Creighton coming with
Oh
you?
yeah. No, no. Darren's been playing with us live since
Yeah.
2013 again.
Mhm.
So I guess it was about, yeah, a 13-year break of Darren being our live touring drummer, and he's back in the fold. And again, at this point, because we've had such a long career as well, people like the original members. Like, you think of any of your favorite bands, it's like you don't want to see somebody else. And Creighton was the first guy to point it out. He goes, all right, he goes like, I love playing with you guys, but honestly, I don't want to hear from any more fans on the road like that. Where's Craig? Where's Darren? I miss Darren, and like, okay, so fair enough. And we all acknowledge that. And so we go out of our way to, carve out the time when it works for everybody. And that's our most difficult, hurdle to get over right now, is just dealing with everybody's individual schedules to kind of figure it all out. But, it's no secret that, Darren is a great asset live, plays drums great, sings great, and is an original member. So from our perspective, it's, our first choice.
That's now. It sounds though like you're doing these albums, the last number of them, more because perhaps you just want to rather than having to, which I think that perhaps makes the albums even that much more cohesive. Perhaps not that they never were, but just that they're more relaxed and that you can perhaps take some time and not feel that there's a gun to your head at all. That you got to keep pumping out records.
Yeah, I mean, look, I've been saying that like literally since the mid 90s, when the musical winds changed and we went from, whatever was happening in the 80s, even early 90s, when Nevermind came out by Nirvana, that literally, ended the careers of anybody that looked and sounded like us at the time. Um, but, we started exploring different, styles of music, and as anybody would, over 40 years of making records. And so we never really felt pressure, but like I always said to people, like if we were just phoning this in or we were just trying to be popular, we wouldn't have made these kinds of records from 1993 on, right? Because we knew it's not going to get on the radio. It's not going to be the in thing to do. So we really have always made these records, first and foremost, for our own entertainment and our own passion for writing songs and making records. And, we sound a certain way and we've built a fan base doing a certain style of music. And whenever we've abandoned that or even tried to go in a different direction, because a lot of songwriters and musicians, they don't want to be pigeonholed into doing the same thing for your entire life. But if I'm being honest, we should all save that for our own solo projects or other projects. If we're going to make a Harem Scarem record, it should sound like Harem Scarem, and it should sound like what people expect Harem Scarem to sound like. And that took a long time for us to realize as songwriters and musicians, just the maturity of, uh, from a personal perspective and just, you know, living through it to have that perspective of saying, if that were my favorite band, do I want them to do a left turn? If I love them for what they did when I first heard them and a couple of records, do I want them to sound completely different? The answer is no. So that was some self-realization for us personally and as a band. And when we decided, we're going to make Harem Scarem records sound like what people expect Harem Scarem records to sound like, it was really a weight off our shoulders because there was a roadmap now, sonically and from a writing perspective that it made everybody happy. And when you're making records that people like or your fan base likes, let's say, um, it it's equally fulfilling, because to do stuff that only you like and put that out to the world and then just get negative feedback, that's not so fun, So we've embraced who we are and what we're doing at this point in our lives, and we have for at least 3 or 4 records now.
Oh, totally. And you've nailed it on the head that fans will know, even if you're doing what the fans want. Believe in myself too. I know when it's legit and when it's you're kind of phoning it in and it's a bit paint by numbers and you're just doing what you feel you're supposed to do rather than it being legit. And that's the
Yeah,
thing is that I feel that with Harem Scarum and yourself and Pete and Darren, like it comes across as no, this is who we are. And we
yeah.
we feel this. This isn't just, well, let's put some songs together that are going to sound a certain way and should hopefully make some people happy because people will see through that.
Yeah, yeah, and I mean, honestly, it's just not in our DNA. We would rather not make records than do it that way. And whether it comes off sounding like we're painting by numbers, because if I'm being honest, like I mean, we're not reinventing this genre. We're not reinventing rock. There's drums, bass, and guitar. I mean, there are only so many options. There are so many, lyrical themes or roads you can go down lyrically and musically that anybody would even want to hear. And if you stray too far from it, well, then you are going off into left field and it's not what the fans signed up for. So that kind of thought process when you're writing and making records, like when you're 17, 18 years old and we're writing our first record and it comes out when we're like, I don't know, 21, and then we're writing mood swings, we're 23, 24 years old. We don't know what we're doing, honestly. We're just, flying in the dark. But when I go back and listen, I go, it's pretty, incredible that we were able to even do it at that level, not really knowing what we were doing. And that's what we built our fan base on, that sound and that just naive approach to record making as, kind of like we were Neanderthals, like just kind of just plowing our way through, trying to make what we thought were, good songs and great rock records. But the evolution of doing that and trying to entertain ourselves, be interesting, that's when we learned, oh, people don't like that. They want what they signed up for. And so you know, now the challenge is not repeating yourself. So 16 records later, we're literally catching ourselves and policing ourselves going, I think we did that riff 15 years ago on that record. And we literally like pull it up on Spotify and go, yeah, that's too close. Or a lyrical theme or just a chord progression or whatever. It becomes really, really difficult. And I didn't even think that we could pull this off. I thought we could write a couple of songs, but a whole album of new material that we haven't tread this ground a million times before, how's that going to work? So we always find it entertaining when we get comments for people going like, you know, the hardcore fans love it, but you'll hear comments from people sometimes going, "Hey, nothing new here." Go, yeah, there's fucking nothing new here. There's 300 songs to choose from. Like you can find a part in every song that not only sounds like somebody else's music, but our music. We've done this before. So we really have to be careful what we're doing and how we approach it, not to even repeat ourselves, let alone repeat every other rock band that's ever tried to make a rock record. And it's impossible. So you can play me anything, and I go, you know what that sounds like? It sounds like this, and that comes from that. We've now, if you're talking 70s rock or even going back in the 60s, like we're talking 50 something years of every musician on the planet trying to write songs and record them and put them out to the world. Like it's just impossible not to. Nobody's reinventing that wheel, is all I mean. Like you just want to do a great version of it and write good songs and bring what you can bring to the table to make it unique, which is my voice, Pete's guitar playing, and that is our understanding of what we're trying to accomplish right now.
And it's the perfect theme music as we get into spring and summer. I find Harem Scarem is just that, that comfort factor. It's like that awesome pair of shoes. It's like, yeah, okay, maybe it's not a new pair of shoes. I've worn these shoes a ton of times, but man,
Yeah.
they're comfortable and I'm happy with them. So leave me alone. I know what
Well,
I'm
that's right.
doing. Nobody,
Yeah, look,
what's
I
wrong with
mean,
that? Yeah.
yeah, look, I think a lot of people that, grew up, we're probably close to the same age. I don't know. I'm 56 now. And I mean, if you grew up in the 80s, I mean, rock, like Motley Crue was on the radio. You know what I mean? Whitesnake was on the radio. Bon Jovi, number one, in the world, with that style of music. And if you're a fan of it, which I think most of us are, if we were teenagers around that time, um, you've embraced that and you like it for when that happened in that time in your life, right? That it's very nostalgic for people that are, in their 50s and 60s. And that's kind of why we're still here doing this because we're products of that era and that style of music and that production style. And we can never escape that, nor do we really want to. I mean, that would be disingenuous and that would be, trying to do something different for the sake of being different. But all the things that I just described, that would be kind of copping out at this point,
Yeah.
right?
And then you're just afraid and ashamed to let it go. And you don't want to do that.
No, exactly.
No.
So, yeah, I mean, we're doing the best we can with our skill set and what we think people want to hear and also what we want to do. So this is a culmination of all of that.
When you're fully succeeding. So no questions there. Now I want to bounce back to you're talking about songs being similar and sounding like this and that. And this was getting me thinking more. And maybe this was a topic years ago. And I
Yeah.
was partly hoping that Pete was here to chime in, but I'm sure you'll know about this. I was comparing going back to Mood Swings and of course No Justice, still just killer. Like it just doesn't it's just a sick song, as most of Harem Scarem material is. But that solo, I'm doing the timeline, and I remember selling when I was working in record stores back in the early '90s, selling Mood Swings along with which that this album I'm about to mention came out a year earlier. Extreme three sides to every story.
Yeah.
The Rest in Peace solo and the No Justice solo. Is that just kind of by accident, or was the solo break middle part to No Justice a bit of a homage to Rest in Peace, or am I just crazy?
No, you know what? I mean, we did love Extreme at that time. Oddly enough, when we were writing Mood Swings, our favorite record was Spilt Milk by Jellyfish. And which is a weird reference if you don't know
That
it,
was a big record
but
for a lot of people.
it was for musicians. So if you're not a musician, you might not know it. If you're not in the industry, you probably wouldn't know it. But people that know. And because that was the ultimate, I guess, the way those records came together, incredible melodies, incredible musicianship, and just everything that you would have loved about Beatles meets Queen meets Beach Boys meets Metallica, right? And so we were really, really influenced heavily by that. But as far as the extreme thing goes, you would have to tell me, maybe you remember better than I do. I don't know when that album came out, the Extreme album, but we wrote Mood Swings in, I want to say 1992. So I don't know.
Three sides is 92.
Yeah, I mean,
It
I would
could
bet
have been
then like that
subconsciously. Yeah, it could have been
there's
subconsciously.
something. Yeah, I mean, look, if you love a record at a certain time,
Yeah.
I don't care who you are, like that's going to creep into your subconscious, maybe even consciously. Like I don't know. And Pete had that riff and sent it to me, and the music was kind of laid out for me. And when I heard that, I literally filled the hole with "Justice in the World," and then da na 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 na. That was there. It just came like that. It wasn't hard, didn't
Yeah.
take long, and then God only knows what he was thinking when he put that solo together, but he just came and all those solos, we would talk about certain notes and we recorded that whole record together. There was never a moment where I sang anything where he wasn't in the room, and there was never a moment where anything was recorded without me being in the room. So that was really a collaborative effort musically on everything on those records. And of course, technology has allowed us to kind of work separately, but we still, we have that connection musically where I know what he's thinking and I know what he's going to do and vice versa. So, yeah, but that's a great question. Well, I
Yeah,
will ask him that.
you should
I will ask
go
him
break
that.
down each
But
solo.
like,
Yeah,
I
just
know he loves
some of the
Nuno.
licks. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah,
Yeah, the
like,
tone, some of the licks are just, this is crazy.
yeah. Another one for us, even from a guitar perspective, we love TNT, Ronnie LeTekro. There was an album called I'm gapping on
On
the
the tails
title.
or intuition.
Intuition.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Intuition was guitar playing on another level as well. And since, I've become friends with Tony Harnell, the singer. He's sang backing vocals on a few songs. Actually on Change the World, he's on a couple of songs as well. There you go.
There
Yeah,
you go.
Tony's on that. Um, just love his voice, and I love that record specifically. But what a talented bunch of guys. But just on the theme of what were we listening to, what were we influenced by? Yeah, those three records at that time were huge, and we were always listening to Queen. Because from a production aesthetic, the vocal arrangements, everything, having multiple singers do different things, we just always liked that. So, yeah, those were the influences.
Nice. So now with you and Pete, you said, the time you would be together in the same room recording vocals, and now with the luxury of being able to doing things remotely, do you have the chance to get together too much to put ideas together when it comes to songs, or do you present things separately? Does one focus more on the lyrics? Do you both come up with riff ideas?
No, I do not play guitar well enough to come up with any riff ideas. I'm strictly basic chord structure, lyrics, and melody. And Pete is doing anything that you hear interesting musically, that's him. From a guitar perspective, just because it's just not something that I can pull off. I can't show up and go, "Hey, check out my really cool guitar riff." That's not me. There's some songs that I just write on my own, and then Pete will add something cool from a guitar perspective to it. But we try to co-write everything together, just because his influence musically from a guitar player is important to what we're trying to do. And Mood Swings was really the first record that we collaborated on musically. There's some co-writes where Pete's a part of it on the first record, but that is, I started out pursuing more songwriting and production, and I'm singing on these demos. And then it just turned into I'm putting a band together, and then Pete joined, and then we made our first record. But a lot of those songs were co-writes with other people, like slowly slipping away. I just co-wrote with another songwriter in New York, and on and on and on. There's a bunch of co-writes, and then uh, by the time Pete and I had spent a few years together on the road, and then when it came time to write our second record, the obvious thing to do was sit down with Pete and start writing songs. And that's where Mood Swings came out of. And I think that was the defining moment in the Harem Scarem sound when his guitar playing and my songwriting came together, and you got Mood Swings out of it, kind of thing. So we've always been mindful of that. And when we work together now, uh, he'll just work on musical ideas and stuff like that. And if he has a melody idea, he'll throw it at me. 9 times out of 10, if I'm coming up with the lyrics, I typically have a way that I'm going to sing that lyric. You start with a song title and you go, okay, do we have a chorus here? It's a good place to start because if you start at the other end with a cool musical idea, it's square peg in a round hole for the rest of it. And we are singing songs. You want people to be able to sing along. And the perfect example of starting with music and just putting those I guess square peg in a round hole is our Voice of Reason record, where everything is reactive on my part to musical ideas that Pete was just like, what do you think of this? He'll just play me an entire piece of music. And I'm like, okay, well, I guess I'll sing here. I guess we'll make that the chorus, and I guess we'll do this. And then now I'm reacting to that, which is very, very difficult to do when you're songwriting,
Let me see here.
you know?
Just doing some digging here.
Okay.
As you were talking about albums, I just thought I'd get them ready.
There you go.
There you
Yeah.
go.
Yeah. So, Voice of Reason to me is such an undertaking because again, technology again was not at the point where it is today. So that's still us playing and singing everything. And holy shit, there's a million parts going on. And the time it took to do it, I still remember it like it was yesterday, almost feeling defeated starting to sing that record. I'm like, oh man, like this is gonna take me fucking half a year just to get through the vocals. And it was insane. It was nuts. But I don't regret it. I mean, I listen to the record still today and I go, yeah, I would never regret creating something, even though Harem Scarem fans like freaked out. They were like, what the hell is this? They weren't songs to people, and to us, we just thought we were being clever, if I'm being honest. We thought, oh, we really, really nailed it here. But people want to sing along, and they couldn't. They couldn't figure out what we were doing next. We're throwing them off the trail. That's not a good plan.
However, that's one of the cult albums of your collection, I'd say, Voice of Reason.
It's
So
funny. Musicians come
yeah,
up to me. I've had people hire me as a producer and go, I heard Voice of Reason.
yeah.
You produced that record. I want you to produce my next record. And yeah, musicians love it because it's a bit of a freak show as far as, figuring out like, chord progressions, melodically, lyrically, that whole thing coming together. We always called it Queen meets Metallica. That's what we thought that record was and we were trying to do. But yeah, man, it was a bold undertaking.
Well, you put it into context too at the time too, what 95 and what was going on, that was just very, very ambitious.
Yeah.
Put something out like that when already you're kind of perhaps getting a bit pigeonholed of being a certain style, and with everything else going on musically at the time, it's like we're going to put this out.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
and I look at maybe a lot of your peers at that time too, being a bit more adventurous, and at the time maybe they were like fans were, I don't know about that, but then it's years later they go back and go, that was
Yeah.
that was something special.
Well, and again, like the new album is very straight up and kind of in between, and this was planned. We said if we could write a record that's in the middle of the first record and the second record, I think people are really gonna like that and enjoy it. If we go too far off, off script and take too many left turns, we just didn't feel like doing that this time. And again, if you want to hear that, you can go to a Voice of Reason or some stuff on the Karma Cleansing record or Overload or something like that. There's some really bizarre stuff on some of our records. And this one just felt organic and natural. And we just didn't hear it where we would be like, okay, so we just finished chorus number two in Better to the Devil You Know. Like, what are we going to do? Like, where's the musical bridge? What are we going to do melodically or from a solo perspective? We just didn't feel like it warranted going just into this weird, bizarre place on these songs. It just felt more like straight up songs, that we just kind of wanted to be true to that vision of it, as opposed to going out of our way to throw everybody off the trail like we normally would. So for better or for worse, that's what we did on this record. But I think fans of the first record, which we hear all the time, go, hey, oh, the first record's still my favorite. Well, we're thinking you probably like this then.
When it comes to the lyrical part of the program, though, too, is I would say, or would you say as well, that hope and optimism are a huge part of the Harem Scarem lyric process, because I find that all the time that I'll listen to albums and go, melodically, your vocals, everything, like, this is just great. But when I actually have a chance to focus a bit on the lyrics, it's just, man, even if I was having a bit of a bum day, I am feeling much better now, or at least I feel that somebody's on my side.
Well, that's awesome. Yeah, you know what? I mean, it's again, my biggest challenge right now, and we kind of thought about this a lot on this new record. There's a couple of songs that lyrically you go like, I don't know, like, do I really want to sing about this as a 56-year-old guy? And we kind of laugh at bands that were popular in the 80s or 90s, specifically the 80s. These dudes are in their 60s and they're singing about nailing chicks. You know what I mean? It was just like, we're not going to do that, right? We're like, even when we were 19, we probably weren't writing songs that were going down that road. We were never a party band writing about getting wasted and trying to hook up with chicks. That was never what we were doing lyrically. So, and even now getting older and, 4 decades later, that's definitely not what we want to do. So, lyrically, it's a bit of a, you know, they're observations about life. They're not really about me or anything like that. They're just thoughts and ideas, about situations, and you try to write something cohesive. And again, when you're starting with a song title and a theme, you're just writing a little story about a theme, and that's what these are. And we're trying to marry, the musical vibe against the lyrical vibe, which we never used to think about before. But now when we're songwriting, going, Better the Devil You Know musically could be pretty fluffy and pretty light. But you want a lyric that kind of fits it, but doesn't take it any further to make it fluffier or too light. So even having the word devil, and there are better the devil, it creates a little bit of a weird, like, what's this about? Like, this is not totally positive, but you can have a positive spin on maybe a negative subject or a subject that creates some controversy within the song. So these are well thought out premises when we're doing this, because I think it all lends to the listening experience, and where you have an emotion about a song or a feeling about it, or Chasing Euphoria, that needs to be kind of like a wanting lyric of, like, there's some mystery to it. There is like some, what are we all chasing? What is life? Everybody gets up every day with a hope and a thought of what they want to do, who they want to become, and what the narrative is of, their life and the day and the journey to get to wherever the hell they think they're trying to go. And Chasing Euphoria is just that. For us, it's music, And so musically, to be able to tie that in and have these songs and themes about things that mean something to us, and probably most people on the planet, like, everybody has a hope and a dream and a thought of how they're going to get there, whether it works out or not. Like, when you reach for everything, what you get is nothing fast. I mean, that's the opening line of Chasing Euphoria. And you go, everyone's in a hurry to get there. But if you skip from A to B, there's no short journey from A to B. You'll never get smarter overnight. You know what I mean? It's all life lessons that get you to where you ultimately end up. And the sad part about that is that you don't figure it out until you're old. And then you feel like, oh shit, like how much time do I actually have left to do what it is that I want to do or love to do? And that's kind of like, the human condition of everybody on the planet.
The epiphany comes a bit too late sometimes.
Exactly my point. So yeah, and so there's, in my mind, there's a thought process and a theme behind these songs. Whether, it's obvious to people or not, I don't know, but hopefully it's intriguing enough. And first and foremost, we want the songs to be singable, that even if you speak another language, which a lot of our fans do, it used to always blow our minds a bit. We'd show up in Japan and none of our fans could really speak English, but they're singing along and we're watching them sing along. And, they come backstage after the show where we sign stuff and we're like, you know all the words to the songs, but you literally don't know what we're saying. Wild. And so I thought, like, maybe our lyrics are just really stupid and only people that don't understand English like our songs. That was our running joke for a while as well. If you don't understand English, you might like what we're saying.
So with Chasing Euphoria and like many of the past few albums, they're done at you have the luxury of having your own studio. And for those who may not be aware, you've had some fair bit of success and work through your studio. And for people that may not know, do you want to take a moment to talk to people about that?
Well, actually, I'm actually in my home studio now, and about 3 years ago, I transitioned everything into a home studio.
Okay.
And so, yeah, I had this place called Vespa Studios for over 25 years at that location. And like you said, we had a lot of incredible records that went through there, some that I worked on, many that I didn't. It was just a commercial recording studio. Obviously, Harem Scarem used it as their home base, and we made all of our studio records there. So this is actually the first studio record that we've done, yeah, maybe since, the early ones where we would go to another studio because our studios weren't developed enough at the time and technology didn't allow for us to record at home. But now technology allows us to record at home. And I can say that even Voice of Reason, so from 1995 on, I was recording all my vocals at home. Even when I owned my own recording studio, I always recorded my vocals at home because I wouldn't drive in the car to go to a studio to sit in a room by myself to record with one microphone. And we had other bands in there. And, so a traditional recording studio is best for, when a band needs to show up, when you need to record drums, guitars, things that require, multiple miking scenarios, a big room, a live floor to capture a band, But when you're recording individual components like a vocal or even a guitar solo, we've always worked in our home studios just because it made sense. And just from a time perspective, we weren't going to hog up an entire studio to sit in a room by myself with one microphone. That was reserved for recording drums and guitars, and mixing was another one that obviously was important to do in a listening environment that you understood. But over the years, yeah, we did a lot of iconic Canadian records. I mean, the studio that I bought originally was owned by Arnold Lanny that did the first three Our Lady Peace records were done in that studio. Some of the Finger 11 stuff, Simple Plan. Then I took it over. Um, I think the first recording we ever did was a Danko Jones EP. And we've been recording those guys, yeah, for 25 years. And Eric Ratz, great engineer and producer, he came over with me when I bought that place from Phase One Studios. And Phase One, I was there for 5 years. We made Voice of Reason there, iconic Canadian studio. But yeah, I mean, over the years, who's been through there? Big Rack, a lot of Big Rack records, Bare Naked Ladies. We did a Muse song when Muse was in Toronto. They came to the studio and did a B-side. Um,
Great Big
yeah,
C.
what's that?
Great Big C were done there as well. And
Yeah, actually, I
I think.
did a couple Great Big Sea things. I mixed a Great Big Sea record there, Sea of No Cares. Um, Lots of stuff. I think the Hip did some stuff. I was not involved with that. Another producer, Gavin Brown, brought in a ton of projects back in the day. Billy Talent, 3 Days Grace. those bands were actually developed in my studio by Gavin. Gavin was just bringing in projects all the time, and he was an up and coming producer. He was playing drums with, Sarah Harmer, Big Sugar at the time, and what wanted to be a record producer. And so, like, literally starting with bands from scratch. But Billy Talent was one of them. Like I said, 3 Days Grace, and just, yeah, countless artists over the 25 years. And Monster Truck, I think, was the last record that we did in the studio at that time. Again, Monster Truck from beginning to end, basically their entire career as well. We did.
That's impressive. Good resume.
Yeah.
So now, so back to Chasing Euphoria, which comes out once again on April the 25th. You have another special release coming out on April the 12th on Record Store Day. Record Store Day Canada, Harem Scarem Anthology Volume 1. Clear vinyl, numbered, autograph card, poster. That's pretty exciting. Were you a part of the process of putting that together?
Yeah, a guy named Ryan from Record Store Day Canada, big.
He's trouble. He's trouble. I know him. He's trouble.
Oh, okay. You see, I've never met Ryan. I'm gonna meet him.
Yeah, no, very supportive.
He's going to be coming out to our show April 19th in Oshawa, and I'll get to meet him in person. We've just been going back and forth on email, but we've put out a couple really cool things over the years with another company that I work with, Sing, where we do these limited edition vinyl releases and stuff like that. We did the Harem Scarem. I have that somewhere around here. The Harem Scarem 30-year anniversary of Mood Swings. And that kind of got us in a conversation with regards to Record Store Day, because honestly, Harem Scarem has never really been a part of Record Store Day in Canada over our entire career. We just kind of went under the radar, and we didn't really know about it. We never were in contact with anybody that was doing it. I think we had No Justice on the B side of a single with Brighton Rock once that Warner put out. And that was it. And so this, I think, is a first thing that we've actually done that includes some of the original material. Because for me, what I want to do over the next few years is get out stuff on vinyl that was never available on vinyl before. Obviously, there's been a huge resurgence in vinyl over the last, 10 years. And a lot of the hardcore fans keep asking, oh, will you put out Voice of Reason on vinyl? Will you do this on vinyl? I'm like, well, we'll get to it. We started with Mood Swings because it was our most popular record. That was a no-brainer to do, and it went incredibly well. And so this is kind of like a continuation of that theme of like, let's put together some cool packages that the fans might like. So I think this is 1,000 limited edition. I heard yesterday that 700 are gone already, are spoken for. So there's a couple hundred left, and we just need to figure out after Record Store Day how we're going to approach getting those to the fans that don't have one yet.
And if anybody's looking too, because I've seen it around and I have one in the other room, is the first album was released, reissued through Music on Vinyl, and they always do a phenomenal job with their pressing. And I think the first run there was a clear version or a white version of the first album. I think the first 1,000 white.
Yeah, there are a couple, and there was a company called Riogon that did it out of Los Angeles, and then I think the one you're talking about is based out of the Netherlands.
Yeah.
And because look, we don't own the Warner material, right? So anybody that wants to license it and put it out, like a record label, can approach Warner about doing it. And even the Mood Swings reissue, I licensed that record from Warner. So here I am, the artist, licensing my own record from Warner. But again, they own that material. They paid for it. They own it. They're the master rights owner on our Warner records. But for us, the door is open for us to, do licensing deals with them and create new product, or do little add-ons or 25 versions of it. So it's kind of cool having a deep catalog and being able to go back and kind of revisit those things and then put them out on a format where they never came out, because people think we're an 80s band, but actually we never released a record in the 80s. It was 1991. And if you remember, it was kind of the end of the CD. No, it was the end of the whole vinyl thing, beginning.
Well, CD was more kind of taking off. No, it was,
you know what I mean?
Kind of taking off. Yeah, cassettes were kind of fading out. CD players became a lot
exactly
more accessible and cost effective.
Yeah, they were weeding out
Yeah.
vinyl production on specific releases. And unless you were already like AC/DC or Deep Purple, they weren't going to do that, right? So our records came out on CD, and I think Warner Music Spain made a vinyl version of the first record on a limited run. And so that was out there 30 something years ago. But other than that, nothing of ours was ever released on vinyl through our Warner years. And then this giant resurgence in vinyl, it just felt like a no-brainer to kind of go back and go, well, let's do some limited edition runs of some of these records and see if anybody wants them, you know.
Well, make sure everybody hunts down Anthology Volume 1 on Record Store Day, April the 12th. Now, you mentioned about Ryan from Record Store Day. You're going to be meeting him at your show in Oshawa, and I wanted to
Yep.
talk about that. So, Oshawa, the 19th of April, you're playing a show?
Yep. Yeah. 19th is our first show of this tour.
Mhm.
And then on the 22nd, we fly off to Spain, and our European tour starts in Spain, Portugal, then Italy, UK, Germany, France, Belgium, Netherlands.
I just got dizzy. So,
Yeah.
including the Frontiers Rock Festival, which you headline night 3, and
Yeah.
it's a pretty stacked bill that night with Mike Tramp, Ronnie Romero, and Robin McCauley, and Mark, formerly of Crocus, I guess, or still sort of Crocus.
Is that right? See, I didn't even know that. Okay, cool. That would be great. Looking forward to that.
And
Yeah, I
February
think
7th.
yeah, I think Wingers playing the
Yeah,
night before
first.
headlining
Yeah.
and Asia, I think the night before that. So I think we're the last band on the Sunday, which might be a little bit weird, but hopefully people want to stick around.
So might all of this lead into a bit more touring this time around, or you thinking it's going to
Well, I mean, the Europe thing will be, yeah, a couple weeks of just full on every day, and then we're trying to sort out, Asia and what we're going to do. Again, the scheduling, just from a personal perspective, is one hurdle, and then you've got to line it all up, with clubs and promoters and everything like that. So it's always a pile, of work to figure it out, actually nail down the dates, and get everybody on board. So we're working. It's a work in progress as usual.
exciting times in Harem Scarem land? Well, I want everybody to not forget Chasing Euphoria, April the 25th on Frontiers Music. You can pre-order it now on differentstagesradio.com. Where is the best place for people to go to get Harem Scarem music, merch, that sort of thing? Where's the best
Yeah,
place?
Frontiers has got everything on their website, and I think, well, I know they're incorporating a merch component to it as well. So they'll be selling some T-shirts and some Harem Scarum related items because we're too lazy to do it, and so it works out perfect.
So look out for Anthology Volume 1 on Record Store Day, April the 12th. Look out for their show in Oshawa on April the 19th. Look out for their run through Europe starting in later in April, including the Frontiers Festival, headlining night 3. Harry, it was a pleasure talking with you and catching up. I'm so excited about Chasing Euphoria and all things good in Harem Scarum land.
Awesome. Thank you very, very much for your time, and I'm sure we'll chat again soon.
All is good. This is Different Stages Radio.